There is a moment just before the world fully wakes up, when everything is still soft, quiet, undetermined. That moment, when your eyes open, but your thoughts haven't yet remembered who you were yesterday, is one of the most sacred spaces of your existence. It is a threshold, and most people cross it unconsciously, checking their phone, repeating yesterday's worries, jumping into the noise without even realizing they had a choice. But what if the way you wake up is not just a habit? What if it's a ritual, a symbolic portal, where reality is reconfigured not by force, but by intention? Carl Jung believed that the unconscious communicates in symbols, and every morning is a symbolic rebirth. You didn't just wake up. You were reborn into the possibility of a new version of you. But instead of claiming that sacred space, most of us rush to resume the persona, the mask, the role. We don't pause. We don't listen. We don't speak a word that aligns us with the invisible. And so we begin the day as if we were still asleep. There is a deeper reason why so many people feel trapped in repetition, why change feels far away, why life seems indifferent to their prayers. It's not because nothing is working, it's because everything responds to what you are being when you wake up. You are not just a body getting out of bed. You are a soul crossing a veil from the unseen to the seen, from the symbolic to the tangible, from the mystery to the material, and the words you choose to say, or the silence you allow to linger, are like spells. They direct the shape of your day. If your first word is fear, you summon more fear. If your first thought is regret, you anchor yourself in the past. If your first feeling is numbness, you fall back into sleep, even with open eyes. But if, in that liminal space, you choose a word, a phrase, a truth that belongs to yourself, you awaken differently. This is not about morning routines, it's about energetic agreements. You're not just opening your eyes, you're signing a contract with the day ahead. And if your soul is not involved in that agreement, you're destined to repeat someone else's script. This message is for those who are tired of waking up into the same pattern. For the ones who feel that life is speaking to them, but they keep missing the message. For the ones who long for a shift that begins not in the world, but in their own consciousness. If you've been asking for a sign, maybe it's not out there. Maybe it's what you say to yourself when the world is still silent. Carl Jung did not view waking up as a mere biological process. He understood it as a symbolic event, a sacred crossing between two dimensions, the unconscious and the conscious, the invisible and the visible, the eternal and the temporal. And in this crossing, the moment you open your eyes, you are not just entering another day. You are stepping into your role as creator or sleepwalking into a repetition. For Jung, the self is not your ego. It is not your personality. The self is the totality of who you are, both the known and the unknown, the seen and the unseen. It is your deepest truth, your divine architecture, the quiet voice that existed long before you learned to perform. And every morning you are given a chance to return to it, or reject it again. But here's the tragedy. Most people wake up straight into the persona, not into presence, not into awareness, but into expectation. The phone, the to-do list, the calendar, the mirror. We don't greet the day, we brace for it. The first thought is often anxiety. The first word is often complaint. The first emotion is often resistance. And with that, the doorway to the self quietly closes again. Jung believed that the unconscious communicates in symbols, and that the state between sleep and wakefulness is rich in symbolic power. This threshold moment is not empty. It is mystical. Your brain is still in theta, the brainwave of dreams, of deep intuition, of access to the soul. It is the state in which you are most open to suggestion, most in tune with archetypal reality, most receptive to the inner world that gets buried during the day. In this space, the self speaks clearly, but softly. But if you rush past it, drown it with noise, bury it under urgency, you won't hear. This is why ancient traditions spoke of the first word of the day with such reverence. It is not superstition, it is spiritual technology. The first word you speak after waking is not just a word. It is an intention. It is a command. It is a mirror. It tells the unconscious what kind of world you're stepping into. It sets the tone for how the self will or will not be honored. If your first word is judgment, the day will feel like a courtroom. If your first word is fear, the day will feel like a battlefield. If your first word is gratitude, the day becomes a temple. Jung taught that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. What better moment to begin this act of inner recognition than at the very edge of consciousness itself? When you awaken with no noise, the soul has space to speak. When you do not immediately become the persona, the self can rise first. This is the invitation of every morning, not to begin your routine, but to remember your essence. You do not wake up to a to-do list. You wake up to a threshold, and thresholds are sacred. Before you can say something sacred, you must first become silent enough to hear it. Every morning you stand at the edge of a choice. Will you rise as a persona, or will you return as a soul? The persona is urgent. It wants you to move, to prove, to perform. It tells you there is no time for stillness. It disguises fear as responsibility. It replaces presence with productivity. But the self waits in the silence. This is why the first few minutes after waking are so crucial. They are not empty. They are full of potential. The modern world has trained us to ignore this liminal space. We check notifications before checking in with our own breath. We remember yesterday before we remember who we truly are, and in doing so, we begin the day already lost. But what if the first thing you did was not do? What if you allowed a pause, a breath, a moment of sacred invisibility? This is the art of withdrawal from the persona, to not rush into identity, to not immediately become the you that others expect, to not pick up the burdens you left at the foot of your bed last night. Because in that gap, in that pregnant silence, something ancient is whispering. Carl Jung wrote that silence is of the greatest help to the soul. And it's true, before the self speaks to you with clarity, it first surrounds you with quiet. But most people cannot hear the self, because the volume of the persona is too loud. That's why the ancients retreated to deserts, mountains, and caves, not to escape the world, but to escape the noise within. You don't need to leave your home to enter sacred silence. You just need to enter your morning differently. Sit. Close your eyes. Feel your body before you judge it. Feel your breath before you direct it. Feel your soul before you name it. There is no performance in these first few minutes, only presence. And from presence, a phrase may arise, a word, a truth. It may come softly, it may feel like a memory, it may feel like nothing, but if it comes from the self, it will change everything. Because it wasn't just a sentence, it was a signature, a vow to live differently today. In the beginning was the Word. John 1:1. This is not just a verse about creation. It is a revelation about consciousness. The entire visible world was not formed by hands, but by voice. Not by action, but by intention. Not by effort, but by utterance. And if we are made in the image of the Creator, then our mornings, too, begin with a word, but not just any word. The Hebrew tradition places immense power in what is first. The first fruits, the first breath, the first light, the first cry. because what is first becomes foundation. This is echoed in the Psalms, where David writes, "Let the morning bring me word of your unfailing love, for I have put my trust in you." Psalm 143:8. He doesn't ask for clarity. He doesn't ask for a miracle. He asks for a word, because he knows one word from the divine changes everything. But here's where the wisdom deepens. God did not appear to Elijah in the wind, nor in the earthquake, nor in the fire. God came in a still, small voice, and that is how the self speaks too, not in thunder but in whisper, not in volume but in presence. When you awaken and immediately flood your mind with noise, you drown the whisper. But when you honor the sacred moment between dream and daylight, you create space for a holy encounter. The Bible is filled with individuals who heard from God in moments of solitude, in dreams, in the night, in caves, in silence. Moses met the divine in the quiet of the wilderness. Jacob wrestled with the angel in the stillness of the night. Samuel heard his name whispered in the temple before dawn. They were not distracted. They were available. Jung believed that symbols and dreams were the language of the unconscious, and the Bible is drenched in both. It is not a manual for behavior, it is a map of the soul. And what if your mornings, your rituals, your first words could become part of that sacred map? What if every awakening was not an accident, but an altar? This is not about religion, this is about remembering the first light, the first breath, the first word. Let it not be a reaction, let it be a reunion. Because when you wake up and speak not from fear, but from the self, you realign with the God who still speaks in whispers. There is a moment, brief but eternal, when you first open your eyes and the world has not yet taken you. In that moment, the soul stirs. The veil is still thin. The self is still near. But most of us miss it. We rush toward the persona, toward roles, identities, responsibilities, noise, and in doing so, we abandon the sanctuary of our own beginning. But what if you could begin differently? What if your first word of the day was not a reaction, but a return? The mystics knew what we've forgotten. The outer world reflects the inner, and the inner responds to ritual, not rituals of religion, but of remembrance. To speak from the self is to remember who you are before the world told you what to be. To declare truth upon waking is to claim dominion over the day before it claims dominion over you. To begin with silence or sacred utterance is to align with the deeper rhythm of creation. You are not just a body entering another Monday. You are a soul rehearsing your return. Carl Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming is not a future achievement. It is a daily homecoming, and that homecoming begins the moment you wake. Do not wait for signs. Do not wait for breakthroughs. Do not wait for permission. Begin with a whisper. Let your first breath be sacred. Let your first word be intentional. Let your first thought be a prayer. It can be as simple as, I return to myself. I walk with the self today. Guide me from within. These are not affirmations. They are awakenings. The self hears them, the unconscious receives them, the spirit aligns with them, and the world, mysteriously, quietly, begins to shift. Not because magic happened, but because you met the morning as a soul, not as a shadow. You do not need hours of meditation. You need one sacred moment of remembrance, one breath, one sentence, one silent yes. And in that yes, the invisible becomes visible, the unconscious becomes conscious, the forgotten becomes foundation. So tomorrow, when the world tries to rush you into forgetting, pause. Before you speak, remember. Before you react, return. Before you become the persona, reunite with the self. You don't need a perfect morning. You need a conscious one. Because when your first word aligns with your essence, you don't just speak into the day, you awaken it, and something ancient begins to move, not outside you, but through you. The invisible responds, reality listens, the soul takes the lead. It's not a miracle, it's alignment. So before anything else tomorrow morning, sit in the silence between dreams and daylight and whisper the phrase that calls your soul home. Because maybe it's not about attracting more into your life, but becoming so deeply aligned that everything meant for your path recognizes you. If this spoke to your soul, comment below with the phrase, "I awaken with the self." Let the world chase noise. Let the soul return to silence. Let the day begin from within.